A jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one. I love this quote mainly because most people often just quote the first part of it, but it actually links in nicely with what we're going to talk about today, which is a question. Is it better to have general knowledge or to have uniquely specialized knowledge? Right off the bat, I think it's better to have more generalized knowledge in the sense where your generalized knowledge is to an intermediate or an advanced standard rather than being completely specialized in only one thing. And the main reason for this is because because it makes you a more well-rounded person and it makes you more adaptable in certain situations. At least from what I've learned through my field of studying evolutionary biology, the survival of the fittest aspect is not the one who's the most buff or anything like that. It's the one who can adapt the best to the environment. Life has a crazy way of rewarding those who can adapt to their environments, and that's why I think specializing does seem a little bit of a you're stacking the deck against yourself, because if you're overtly specialized in this one thing, then you're essentially, there's so much more knowledge to be had that could potentially make you more adaptable, and it almost makes you a little bit of a one-trick pony. Not to say that specialization is bad for all things. I mean, obviously, if you go to get your hernia fixed, for example, you obviously would not want, you would want a specialized surgeon in order to fix that. But what I'm saying is that we should always strive to increase our knowledge across as many different streams as possible. So then that way we're effective in in any single environment that we're put in, rather than just, specializing on one and then having, a base level, a foundational level on everything else. I think it's a lot more desirable. Like I said, I think it's more desirable to have proficiency at an advanced standard in multiple different areas rather than just having an extremely specialized skill. And the reason for this is because I seem to get the impression that we're heading into the era where so-called experts reign, and that's not necessarily a good thing. I mean, you always hear this stuff, it's like, oh, well, let's listen to the experts. And then there's this weird ideological game that everybody plays where they say, oh, well, I'm not an expert, and it sort of obfuscates the truth of the matter. The truth of the matter is that I don't necessarily trust an expert because on a news panel or anything else, because when we defer to a so-called expert without having other points of view on the go, then it can seem a little bit dogmatic. I'm not trying to say that we should just completely disregard the so-called expert advice, because they, more often than not, they do have important things to say. However, I think that a true expert also needs to have well-rounded experience rather than just pure base theoretical knowledge. And I think that being a quote-unquote expert in just one specific thing can lead to a little bit of tunnel vision, and it might not lead to the best solution for the particular problem at hand, especially when, if they're gathering a panel of experts. Well, why don't we have let's get these experts from a variety of different fields. At least I hope that's what they're doing. Although I do think that generalization is more desirable, wherein you have more areas of proficiency. You have to attain a certain standard of proficiency in all of those areas. It's not just an excuse to slack off where you can say, oh, well, general knowledge is better than specialization, so I won't put any effort in. That's not what I mean at all. I think we should strive to be these Renaissance men where we have multiple areas of proficiency. For example, just because you're a great plumber doesn't necessarily mean that you can't also be a great philosopher. Although, what some people may think. And also it works the same way vice versa. A great philosopher, just because you're a great philosopher doesn't necessarily mean that you can't become a great plumber, despite what some other people may think. And I think that that's the reason why it's so important. We need to cultivate as much knowledge as we can, because it's only going to make us more adaptable. And once we're more adaptable, we're able to survive better. We're able to increase our own value. And we're also able to just have an easier life, because, let's face it, it ain't easy out here. But if we have to give ourselves every single fighting chance, not just pigeonhole ourselves into one thing and say, okay, you know what, I'm going to do this for the next 30 years or so, or this is what I'm at. No, we have to learn not just everything within that, but we also have to have other skill sets that we can call upon when thrown into different situations. And another reason, the last point that I'll make on this, the reason why we should strive to be as well-rounded as possible, is because when we have multiple different areas of proficiency, when we all are striving towards that, it makes collaboration a lot easier. And also, we can gain different perspectives based on the different areas of proficiency that we have that could potentially be applicable. Now, the plumber and the philosopher example may be a bad example. However, I would say that a good philosopher and a good plumber could probably find the reason as to how philosophy can apply to plumbing and how plumbing can apply to philosophy. But I think that's sort of that syncretic, merging of two different fields where you have an equal and a high standard of proficiency in each of them. It enables you to almost short circuit your way and find connections that you may not necessarily have found otherwise, and they can lead to different perspectives and some unbelievably cool ideas as well. So that's why I like, in philosophical terms anyway, Slavoj Žižek's really cool, because he's taken Hegelian philosophy and essentially plugged it into Lacanian psychoanalysis, and it made him a pariah across a lot of schools for it. But it does lead to some really, really interesting connections, and I think that we should all strive to do that as well. So anyway, let me know in the comments below what you think. Do you think it's better to be a jack of all trades or just a master of one? Would you consider yourself to be a jack of all trades, or are you striving to be a master of one? Or are you a master of none? In any event, let me know what your thoughts were in the comments below. And as always, thank you so much for watching.